Ambassador Chinwei stood at the center of the Galactic Council chamber, surrounded by representatives from over 1,000 worlds. The crystalline dome above her head pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, each flash representing another species, calling for humanity's submission. She had traveled here aboard Earth's finest diplomatic vessel, carrying what she knew would be humanity's final answer. The Zephyrian Prime Minister's tentacles writhed with agitation as his translator projected his words into the chamber. Human Ambassador, your species has had 6 solar cycles to consider our generous offer. The Galactic Unification Protocol ensures peace, prosperity, and protection for all member species. Why do you persist in this foolish independence? Chen's jaw tightened. The protocol was nothing more than slavery wrapped in diplomatic language. Every species that joined surrendered their military, their resources, and their right to self-governance to the Council's central authority. In return, they received protection from threats that somehow never seemed to materialize until after they refused to join. Prime Minister Veltar, Chen replied, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic enhancement field. Humanity has reviewed your protocol extensively. We appreciate the Council's concern for our welfare. However, we must respectfully decline membership at this time. A wave of shocked silence rippled through the assembly. The Krillian delegate's chinness shell clicked in what Chen recognized as extreme displeasure. The massive Gorvanian representative's 3 heads swiveled toward her in unison, their compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lights like fractured rainbows. Decline? The voice belonged to Counselor Thane, a being of pure energy contained within a humanoid shell of metal and crystal. His species, Ethereals, had founded the Council 5,000 years ago and claimed to have achieved perfect harmony through unity. Ambassador Chen, perhaps you misunderstand the gravity of your situation. No species has ever refused the protocol twice. Chen felt the weight of 1,000 alien gazes upon her. Through her neural implant, she could feel the tension in the Earth fleet waiting just outside the system's heliopause. Admiral Harrison had wanted to bring the entire Soul Defense Force, but Earth's government had insisted on showing restraint. Now, surrounded by the representatives of civilizations that could each feel fleets larger than humanity's entire navy, Chen wondered if restraint had been wisdom or folly. Counselor Thane, she said, straightening her shoulders, humanity understands perfectly. We've studied the fates of the Valkyrian Empire, the Zek Confederacy, and the free worlds of Rigel, all proud civilizations that chose unity over independence. We've seen how their cultures were preserved in museums while their people became interchangeable workers in the Council's grand design. The chamber erupted in cacophony of alien voices. Translators worked overtime to convert the multilingual outrage into something resembling coherent protest. Chen caught fragments of the accusations. Arrogance, primitive thinking, threat to galactic stability. Veltar's tentacles slammed against the speaking podium, the sound echoing like gunshots. The human species numbers fewer than 20 billion across a mere dozen worlds. You face civilizations with populations in the trillions, fleets that darken star systems, weapons that can shatter planets. What possible hope do you have of maintaining this suicidal independence? Chen smiled, though she felt no humor. Her species had been asking themselves the same question for months. Earth scientists estimated they could hold out for perhaps a year against a concentrated assault by even a single major council member. Against the full might of the Galactic Council, humanity's lifespan could be measured in days. Prime Minister, my people have a saying, give me liberty or give me death. We would rather die free than live as slaves, no matter how comfortable the chains. The chamber fell silent again, but this time the quiet felt different. Dangerous. Chun could sense the shift in the alien delegates' emotions, even without understanding their physiologies. What had been frustration and confusion was crystallizing into something harder and more final. Counselor Thane rose from his seat, his energy form pulsing brighter within his containment shell. Very well, Ambassador Chun. If humanity chooses extinction over evolution, the Council will not stand in your way. You have one standard galactic month to reconsider. After that, the protocol will be enforced through alternative means. The threat hung in the recycled air like poison. Chun had expected this. But hearing it spoken aloud in front of representatives from across the galaxy made it real in a way that intelligence reports never could. They weren't just refusing an invitation anymore. They were choosing war against odds that made David and Goliath look like a fair fight. "Counselor, the answer will be the same in a month as is today," Chin replied. "Humanity stands by its decision." As she turned to leave the chamber, Chin caught sight of the viewing galleries where lesser species representatives sat in silent observation. Their faces, when she could read them, showed a mixture of awe and terror. Some, she realized, were looking at her with something that might have been admiration. Walking to the corridor toward her ship's docking bay, Chin activated her secure communication link. "Control, this is Ambassador Chun. Package delivered. Response as expected. Recommend implementing Prometheus protocol immediately." Admiral Harrison's voice crackled through the quantum encrypted channel. "Copy that, Ambassador. All fleet units are standing by. Safe travels home." Home. Chin wondered if Earth would still exist as a free world when she returned. As her shuttle lifted off from the Council station, she looked back at the massive structure floating in space like a metallic flower. Soon, that flower would turn its attention toward humanity's small corner of the galaxy. The war they had just declared would either forge humanity into something greater than they had ever been, or reduce them to cosmic dust scattered among the stars. The first attack came 3 weeks early. Captain Sarah Martinez felt the deck of the U.S. Defiance shudder as enemy plasma bolts struck their deflector shields. Alarms wailed throughout the bridge as her tactical officer called out damage reports. But Sarah's attention was fixed on the main display, showing the impossible sight beyond their viewports. "My God," whispered Commander Torres, her executive officer. "How many ships is that?" The Zephyrian assault fleet stretched across space like a metallic ocean. Sarah's sensors counted over 2,000 vessels, ranging from sleek destroyers to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed Earth's largest battleships. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed along their hulls in synchronized waves, turning the enemy fleet into a living constellation of death. "All human vessels. This is Admiral Harrison aboard the Prometheus." The fleet commander's voice cut through the chaos. "Execute Thermopylae formation. We hold the line here, no matter the cost." Sarah gripped her command chair as another volley rocked the Defiance. Through her neural link to the ship's tactical systems, she could feel every hit like a physical blow. Earth's finest defensive technology was being systematically overwhelmed by weapons that made their most advanced armaments look like primitive projectile rifles. "Captain, enemy dreadnought moving to attack position," Lieutenant Chun called from the weapons station, charging what looks like a planet killer beam. Sarah's blood turned to ice. Planet killers weren't supposed to exist. The Council had claimed such weapons were banned by galactic law, too dangerous for any civilized species to possess. Apparently, civilized species weren't expected to refuse the protocol. "All power to forward shields," Sarah ordered. Emergency maneuvers, full evasive. The Defiance twisted through space with impossible grace, her experimental inertial dampeners allowing maneuvers that would have turned her crew into paste in any other human vessel. But even as they dodged the massive beam that carved through space where they had been moments before, Sarah knew they were only delaying the inevitable. Across the battlefield, human ships fought with a desperate fury that surprised even their own crews. The U.S. Valiant rammed the Zephyrian cruiser rather than let it break through their formation. The destroyer Magellan held position against a squadron of enemy fighters until her reactor core finally breached, taking dozens of attackers with her in a miniature star. But for every enemy ship they destroyed, 10 more took its place. "Captain," her communications officer's voice was tight with controlled panic, "I'm receiving reports from the other human colonies. The Krillians have attacked Tau Ceti. The Gervanian Third Fleet is moving on Wolf 359. It's not just us. They're hitting everyone simultaneously." Sarah felt her heart sink. Humanity had hoped for a more limited response. Perhaps pressure applied to Earth alone while their colonies were left as bargaining chips. Instead, the Council had chosen total war. "Any word from the Prometheus?" she asked. Her calm officer shook his head. "Admiral Harrison's ship went dark 10 minutes ago. I'm detecting massive debris fields in her last known position. The bridge fell silent, except for the constant reports of system failures and enemy movements. Sarah realized that she might now be the senior officer left alive in what remained of humanity's defense fleet. "Captain," Lieutenant Chen's voice was strangely calm. "The enemy fleet is repositioning. They're forming a bombardment configuration around Earth." Through the viewports, Sarah could see the beautiful blue-green marble that had given birth to her species. Cloud patterns swirled across continents that held 20 billion human souls, people who had trusted their military to protect them from exactly this scenario. "Orders, Captain?" Commander Torres asked quietly. Sarah closed her eyes and accessed the classified files that Admiral Harrison had transferred to all senior commanders before the battle. Project Prometheus, humanity's final contingency plan, designed for exactly this moment when conventional resistance had failed. "Mr. Chun," she said, opening her eyes, "transmit authorization codes Omega-77 to all surviving human vessels. Execute Prometheus protocol." Her weapons officer's hands trembled as he input the codes. "Captain, are you sure?" "The projections suggest." "I know what the projections suggest, Lieutenant. Execute the order." Across the scattered remains of Earth's defense fleet, the same scene played out on dozens of bridges. Captains who had sworn to protect humanity activated systems that their own scientists barely understood. Technology reverse-engineered from artifacts found in the ruins of dead civilizations. The Defiance shuddered differently this time, not from enemy fire, but from the activation of her experimental systems. Deep in the ship's core, matter and antimatter danced in patterns that violated several fundamental laws of physics. The navigation console began displaying readings that made no sense, coordinates that existed in dimensions human mathematics could barely describe. "Captain," her science officer called out, her voice filled with wonder and terror. "The quantum field generators are online. All ships report ready for translation." Sarah looked one last time at Earth, memorizing the sight of her home world wreathed in the glow of enemy weapons. When they returned, if they returned, everything would be different. "All vessels," she broadcast on the emergency frequency, "humanity has tried negotiation. We've tried conventional warfare. Now we try something else. Execute translation on my mark. 3, 2, 1 mark." Reality twisted around the Defiance like a broken mirror. The last thing Sarah saw before the universe disappeared was Earth's moon, pocked with the scars of 1 billion years of impacts, hanging serene and eternal against the star-drunk darkness of space. Then they were somewhere else entirely, in a place where the laws of physics were more like suggestions, and the word impossible had lost all meaning. Sarah Martinez opened her eyes to impossible geometry. The Defiance hung suspended in space that hurt to look at directly. Stars wheeled in patterns that violated every law of astronomy, their light bending through angles that shouldn't exist. In the distance, structures the size of solar systems drifted like ancient monuments, their surfaces covered in symbols that seemed to writhe when observed. "Status report." Sarah managed, fighting down nausea as her brain struggled to process their surroundings. "All systems operational, Captain," Commander Torres replied, though his voice carried an edge of hysteria. "But our instruments are reading things that can't be right. According to the gravitational sensors, we're inside a star. According to the optical sensors, we're in deep void. According to quantum readings, we're everywhere at once." Through her neural link to the ship's systems, Sarah could feel the Defiance's AI struggling to make sense of their environment. The computer had been forced to create entirely new categories of data just to store the readings they were receiving. "Other ships?" she asked. 47 human vessels successfully translated, Captain. The others? Torres shook his head. Some didn't make it. Some made it somewhere else. And some made it here, but they're not quite the same anymore. Sarah didn't ask for clarification. She could see the U.S. horizon through the viewport, its hull shifting between solid matter and something that looked like crystallized thought. Whatever this place was, it was changing them. "Captain," Lieutenant Chen called from the science station, "I'm detecting massive power signatures approaching our position. Whatever lives here, it knows we've arrived." The entities that emerged from the twisted space-time around them defied description. They moved like living mathematics, their forms shifting between geometric impossibilities and patterns of pure energy. Sarah's brain tried to make sense of what she was seeing and settled on calling them the architects, though she knew that was laughably inadequate. One of the beings approached the defiance, and suddenly Sarah could hear its voice inside her mind. Not words, but concepts that her consciousness translated into something resembling language. Young flesh forms. You have found the nexus. How unusual. Who are you? Sarah asked aloud, not knowing if the entity could hear her. We are the builders of what was before. We shape reality when your kind were barely dreams in the quantum foam. You interest us, small captain. Your species has done something unprecedented. Images flooded Sarah's mind. The galaxy, as it had been millions of years ago, ruled by beings of impossible power who had transcended physical existence. The rise and fall of countless civilizations, all following the same pattern of growth, stagnation, and absorption into larger collective entities. The Galactic Council, the entity continued, follows the old pattern: uniformity, conformity, the gradual elimination of chaos in favor of perfect order. Most species welcome this. Your kind refuses. We choose freedom, Sarah said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Freedom? The concept rippled through the entity's form like laughter. Such a small word for such a vast idea. Your species generates more quantum uncertainty per individual than entire star systems of civilized beings. You are chaos seeds in the garden of order. Another presence joined the first, this one feeling older and more alien. The flesh forms have activated the translation protocols, sister. They seek to become more than they are. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. What are you talking about? The technology you used to reach this place, the first entity explained, was not created by any species in your galaxy. It was left behind by us, seated among the ruins of civilizations that showed promise. Most who find it use it to escape extinction. Few use it to seek transformation. The truth hit Sarah like a physical blow. The artifacts humanity had reverse-engineered, the technology that had allowed them to create the translation systems. It had all been a test. You've been watching us, she whispered. We watch all young species. Most disappoint us. They achieve faster than light travel, discover they are not alone, and immediately begin the process of homogenization. They join federations, accept protocols, sand down their unique edges until they fit perfectly into galactic order. Through the viewport, Sarah could see changes beginning in the human fleet. The ships themselves were starting to shift and flow, their hulls taking on properties that existed somewhere between matter and energy. But more than that, she could feel changes in herself, in her crew, in every human who had made the translation. What's happening to us? She asked. Evolution, the second entity replied. Your species refused to surrender its chaos. Now that chaos will be refined, focused, transformed into something the galaxy has never seen. You will return to face your enemies, but you will not return as you were. Sarah felt her consciousness expanding, touching the minds of her crew, then reaching out to the other human ships, then further still to something vast and growing. She was still herself, but she was also becoming part of something larger. Not the collective uniformity that the Council demanded, but a symphony of individual voices harmonizing into something greater than the sum of its parts. The Council believes strength comes from conformity, the first entity continued. They will learn that true strength comes from unity and diversity, from the constructive interference of a billion different dreams. How long? Sarah asked, though she was beginning to understand that time moved differently in this place. In your dimension, moments. In reality, as long as necessary. When you return, you will carry gifts that will reshape the balance of power. Your enemies will face not the humanity they drove from their homes, but something new, something unprecedented. The transformation accelerated. Sarah felt her body becoming something more flexible, more adaptable. Her mind expanded to encompass concepts that human language had no words for. Around her, the crew of the Defiance underwent their own metamorphoses, each unique, each perfectly suited to the role they would play in what was coming. Remember, the entity said as one, you chose this path, not because you were weak, but because you were strong enough to refuse the easy surrender. The galaxy will remember this day as the moment everything changed, Sarah smiled, and her smile held possibilities that would have terrified the Galactic Council. The Zephyrian Fleet commander Vel Nash watched his sensors with growing confusion as space itself began to tear open above Earth's northern pole. The human resistance had been crushed 3 standard hours ago. Their pathetic fleet scattered like leaves before the might of the Council's combined forces. The planet below was defenseless, its orbital installations destroyed, its population centers targeted for systematic bombardment that would demonstrate the cost of defying galactic law. But the readings his instruments were showing made no sense. "Science, Officer Keth," he called to his subordinate. "What am I looking at?" The younger Zephyrian's tentacles writhed with nervousness. "Commander, the quantum distortions are off our scales. It's as if reality is folding. Our theoretical physics department suggests it might be some kind of dimensional translation, but the energy requirements will be impossible for a civilization at humanity's level." Vel Nash studied the growing rift in space. The edges rippled with colors that his species' enhanced visual spectrum couldn't properly process, hues that seemed to exist between the traditional wavelengths of light. Whatever was coming through, it was big. "Alert all ships," he ordered. "Unknown vessels emerging from dimensional rift. Assume hostile intent." The first ship that emerged from the tear in space barely resembled the human vessels his fleet had destroyed hours earlier. Its hull flowed like liquid metal, surfaces shifting between solid matter and something that looked like crystallized energy. Geometric patterns pulsed along its length in configurations that hurt to look at directly. Then came the second ship, and the third, and more, each one unique, each one radiating power signatures that made Vel Nash's flagship feel like an antique. 47 vessels and counting, his tactical officer reported, voice tight with professional alarm. "Commander, their energy readings are unprecedented. Each ship is generating more power than our entire task force combined." Vel Nash felt a command tentacles curl with unease. These weren't the same humans his fleet had so easily defeated. These ships move with impossible grace, their hulls seeming to phase in and out of normal space-time. And the readings suggested technology that exceeded even the Council's most advanced civilizations. "Open a communication channel," he ordered. "Let's see what humanity thinks it has accomplished." The face that appeared on his main screen was recognizably human, but changed in ways that sent evolutionary alarm signals racing through Vel Nash's nervous system. Captain Sarah Martinez's eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire galaxies, and when she smiled, reality itself seemed to bend slightly around her. "Greetings, Commander Vel Nash," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through dimensions he hadn't known existed. "I believe you have something that belongs to us." "Human," Vel Nash replied, fighting to keep his voice steady. "You face the combined might of 1,000 worlds. Surrender now, and your species will be granted the mercy of absorption into the Galactic Protocol." Sarah Martinez's laughter was like music played on instruments made of crystallized time. "Commander, I think you misunderstand the situation. We didn't come back to surrender. We came back to negotiate." "Negotiate?" Vel Nash's tentacles flared with indignation. "Your species is beaten. Your worlds are defenseless. What possible position do you think you negotiate from?" "From this one," Sarah replied. The human fleet moved as one entity, each ship flowing through space in perfect coordination. They didn't fire weapons. They didn't need to. Their mere presence began to alter the fundamental properties of the space around them. Vel Nash watched in horror as his own ship's hulls began to resonate with frequencies that caused molecular cohesion failures. "Impossible," he whispered. "Commander," Sarah continued, her voice now coming from every speaker on his bridge simultaneously. "Humanity has learned something during our brief absence. The universe is far stranger and more wonderful than the Council has taught its member species. You've all been living in a very small corner of reality, following rules that were imposed rather than discovered." Vel Nash tried to order his fleet to attack, but found that his ship's weapon systems were no longer responding to commands. Not damaged, not disabled, simply choosing not to function. As if the universe itself was refusing to allow violence in the presence of these transformed humans. "What have you become?" he asked. "What we always had the potential to be," Sarah answered. "Your council believes that order comes from conformity, That peace requires uniformity. But you've forgotten the first law of existence. Diversity creates strength, chaos enables growth, and freedom is a foundation of all true progress. Around Earth, space itself began to change. The scars left by the Council's bombardment faded, as if they had never existed. The human colonies that had been under attack in distant systems reported the same phenomenon. Their attackers' weapons simply ceasing to function, their enemies' ships becoming as harmless as museum displays. The galaxy will learn of this aggression. Vel Nash threatened. The full might of the Council will fall upon your species. The full might of the Council, Sarah replied, just did, and it wasn't enough. Commander, we're going to make you an offer that your superiors will find very interesting. Humanity is willing to negotiate a new relationship with the galactic community, not as subjects, not as members of your protocol, but as equals. Equals? Vel Nash's translator struggled with the concept. Your species numbers 20 billion across 12 worlds. The Council speaks for over 10 trillion beings across 100,000 systems. Numbers, Sarah said dismissively. The entities that taught us to transcend our limitations weren't concerned with numbers. They were concerned with potential. Your Council has spent millennia creating a galaxy of followers. Humanity offers something different, a galaxy of leaders. Vel Nash felt his worldview cracking like an egg. Everything the Council had taught about the natural order of civilizations, about the inevitable progress toward unity and conformity, was being challenged by these impossible humans. "What do you want?" he asked finally. Sarah Martinez smiled again, and this time her smile held the promise of change that would ripple across every star system in the galaxy. "We want what we've always wanted, Commander. Freedom, not just for humanity, but for every species that's been told conformity is the price of peace. The galaxy is about to discover that there are alternatives to the Council's way. We're here to teach those alternatives." 6 months after the failed invasion of Earth, Council Thane stood before an emergency assembly of the Galactic Council, his energy form flickering with barely contained agitation. The crystalline chamber that had housed 1,000 species in perfect hierarchical order was now half empty, with many seats occupied by holographic projections rather than physical representatives. "The situation is deteriorating beyond our ability to control," he announced to the assembled delegates. 17 star systems have formally withdrawn from the protocol. 43 others have requested renegotiation of their membership terms. The Velcarian Restoration Movement claims they're ready to rebuild their empire. Even the Zeph are talking about reconstituting their confederacy. Prime Minister Veltar's tentacles writhe with distress. This is the humans' doing. Somehow they become infectious. Every species they contact begins questioning the natural order. It's chaos. From a gallery reserved for newer members, Ambassador Kresh of the recently liberated Altarian Republic stood to address the assembly. 6 months ago, her people had been a quiet, compliant member species, their warrior culture successfully suppressed under the protocol's guidance. Now she wore the traditional battle armor of her ancestors, and her eyes held the fire of revolution. "Counselor Thane," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems, "the Altarian Republic formally withdraws from the Galactic Protocol, effective immediately. We choose freedom over security, diversity over uniformity, growth over stagnation." The chamber erupted in chaos as 24 other representatives rose to their feet, each carrying similar decorations. The sight that had once been unthinkable, member species openly defying the Council, was becoming commonplace. Through the emergency communication link to his private chambers, Thane received a priority transmission from Fleet Command. The news was worse than he had feared. "Counselor," came the voice of Admiral Zexai, "the human fleet has arrived at the nexus point. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, inviting any species that desires true freedom to join them for what they're calling the New Compact." Thane's energy form pulsed with fury. The nexus point was the ancient ceremonial center of galactic civilization, a massive space station constructed around a binary neutron star system. It had been the Council's seat of power for 5,000 years, a symbol of unity and order that no force in the galaxy had ever dared to challenge. "Fleet strength?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. Our sensors can't get accurate readings on their ships. They seem to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Conservative estimates suggest they have enough firepower to sterilize half the galaxy's inhabited worlds. But even as Admiral Zexhai spoke, Thane knew that military force was no longer the answer. The humans had demonstrated something far more dangerous than superior weapons. They had shown the galaxy species that alternatives to the Council's way were possible. Counselor, Prime Minister Veltar interrupted his thoughts. Incoming transmission from a human fleet. They're requesting diplomatic negotiations. The irony was not lost on Thane. 6 months ago, humanity had stood in this very chamber, refusing the Council's generous offer of absorption. Now, with half the galaxy in open rebellion, and the other half questioning everything they had been taught to believe, the humans were offering to negotiate. Accept the transmission. Thane ordered. Captain Sarah Martinez's image appeared in the center of the chamber, but she was no longer alone. Representatives from dozens of species stood with her. Beings that had once been loyal council members, now transformed by their contact with humanity's infectious concept of freedom. Counselor Thane, Sarah said, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate through the very structure of reality. Humanity extends greetings to the Galactic Council. We come bearing an offer of peace. Peace! Thane's energy form flared brighter. You have destroyed everything we built. 5,000 years of order, of progress, of unity, all reduced to chaos because of your species' selfish refusal to accept civilization. Sarah Martinez smiled, and her smile held the weight of worlds. Counselor, you haven't built unity. You've built conformity. You haven't created order, you've enforced stagnation. The galaxy has been asleep for millennia, dreaming the same dreams, following the same paths, becoming smaller with each passing generation. Behind her, the representatives of the free species nodded in agreement. Thane could see the changes in them, the way their postures had shifted from submissive compliance to proud independence. Whatever the humans had done, whatever they had become, they were spreading like a virus throughout the galaxy. We offer the Council a choice, Sarah continued. Join us in building something new, a galactic community based on voluntary cooperation rather than mandatory submission. Help us create a civilization where diversity is celebrated, where innovation is encouraged, where every species can contribute their unique strengths to the whole. And if we refuse? Thane asked, though he already knew the answer. Then you'll become increasingly irrelevant, Sarah replied matter-of-factly. Every day, more species discover that they don't need the Council's protection, don't need the protocol's restrictions, don't need to surrender their dreams to achieve security. The choice isn't between order and chaos, Counselor. It's between growth and decay. Around the chamber, Thane could see the remaining Council members wavering. Even some of the founding species, civilizations that had helped create the protocol millennia ago, were beginning to look uncertain. The humans are offering us partnership, Ambassador Kresh added from the gallery. Not as subjects or rulers, but as equals in something greater than any of U.S. could achieve alone. The Altarian Republic has already accepted. One by one, other representatives began to stand, each announcing their species' intention to join the new compact. Not all. Many species genuinely prefer the security of the old system, and humanity seemed content to let them choose their own path. But enough to fundamentally alter the balance of power in the galaxy. Thane watched his carefully ordered civilization crumble and transform before his eyes. The humans had done the impossible. They had proven that there were alternatives to the path the Council had believed was inevitable. Very well, he said finally, his energy form dimming with something that might have been relief. The ethereal collective will consider joining your new compact, but we have conditions. Sarah Martinez's laughter filled the chamber, like bells ringing across a million worlds. Counselor, we wouldn't have it any other way. After all, that's what freedom means, the right to negotiate your own terms. As the transmission ended and the council chamber filled with the unprecedented sound of truly free debate, Thane realized that humanity had given the galaxy something it had forgotten it was missing: hope for a future that was genuinely new, genuinely different, genuinely free. The age of enforced unity was ending. The age of chosen cooperation was about to begin, And it had all started with 20 billion humans who had simply refused to surrender their right to say no.